When an act of kindness comes your way, our response is usually to reciprocate that, to show an act of kindness back towards them. Raise your hand if you've ever had your meal paid for by somebody else other than your parents. All right? Raise your hand if you've ever returned that favor by being at a restaurant and you paid for somebody else's meal without them knowing about it. All right? Usually when an act of kindness is given to you, then our response should very quickly be, I need to show that same form of act of kindness back. So Monday night, I'm getting to go to a Cardinals game with my son's baseball team. And somebody showed me an act of kindness by giving me tickets. Now, these aren't just ordinary tickets. These are tickets that are in Section 3. Now, maybe you don't know what that means. My son and the team are sitting in Section 137. I'm in Section 3. What that means is I am right behind the catcher. But it doesn't stop there. Because of this act of kindness, I get to go 2 hours early, walk past a little grand piano, and go into their dining room. And my middle son, who likes the Yankees instead of the Cardinals, are going to go inside this place and eat whatever we want to eat for free. And then as the game is about to begin, we will make our way to what's called the Cardinals Club, which is right behind the catcher's plate there. And I get to sit down, and at the end of every inning, there will be a waiter that will come to us and ask, is there anything you would like to eat or drink? And I will, because my favorite TV show or network is, other than ESPN, is what? The Food Network channel. And my identical twin, Braden, will also order as much food as we possibly can. But the act of kindness didn't stop there. This individual also gave me VIP parking. So now I don't have to pay for parking to go to the Cardinals game. So for the last 2 or 3 days, I've been trying to think about what can I do in return? How do I give back? So I called a guy that played for the Cardinals, and I said, hey, I need ideas. You know, can I get Melina's signature? And then my dad brought up a good point. This guy probably rubs elbows with people like Melina. You know, and you're thinking about, like, what is it that I can give back to somebody who showed such a kindness that, I don't know, I mean, is there any way possible I can give something back? Will a card with a note and a picture of me and Braden shoving food in our mouth justify and work? I don't know. But as we talked about this morning, when you see an act of kindness that Christ showed us through the gospel, what then is our response to this? Well, I think the first one is the same response that Christ had. And that is, guys, let people come and feast at your table. If you want to show act of kindness, love everybody. Do not pick and choose. The second way, I guess you would say, is to be able to show the act or our response is love with the light that's in the world. Remember the lampstand in the holy room? It's to show on bread. That's how you respond back with love. Your light is a representation of Christ. What you shine, if you're a child of God, if you're a Christian, if you came up out of that water and you started a brand new life, then that is a beacon, that is a light, and what people are seeing is Jesus. They don't need to see the sin. They do not need to see you shining light on what everybody's doing in here is wrong and what is bad. No, let them see Jesus. That's how you respond back. When you think about this, you love now and not later, right? Don't wait. Well, he doesn't love me back. Who cares? Well, this guy right here did this, or she did this in the hallway. Who cares? Love back. I want you to think about the worst possible thing that could happen to you here on earth. And then turn around and say, did Christ have a right to say, you know what, I don't love you? Now, even though it's not in his essence to do that, but let's just, yeah. There's nothing that you could go through and talk about or experience that would say, you know what, I think God would be okay with me saying, you know what, I just don't love him anymore. Oh, Derrick, you haven't been through. I don't care. Love back. Love with compassion. When you look at somebody and they have betrayed you, or when you look at somebody and they've denied you, if you look at somebody and they have said one thing, they said, Derrick, I promise you I'm going to do this, and they don't do it, our response as humans are what? I don't trust you anymore. I don't do this anymore. Don't count on me to come back and help you. Our response to what Christ did for us was his look at Peter was, I still need you to go preach an awesome sermon in Acts 2. And I tell you, one of my favorite things about Peter is right before he was supposed to be put to death, I think it's in Acts 12, he's sound asleep between two soldiers. Christ put him out in ministry. He didn't say, hey, you denied me, then I don't have anything else to do with you. That's what we do to people. But our response back to Christ's love should just be, look, try to be the exact same thing. If Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11 that, hey, imitate me because I'm an imitator of Christ, then that's what Paul is. He's imitating the same way Christ loved. And that's how we should love. Love with a protection that we talked about this morning. And then love unconditionally. So I was trying to figure out, what is some way to make this. I was trying to wrap it up in a pretty bow and a wrapper and all this and that. And I'm not creative and anything like that. So I'm going to share this with you. This is what the Bible says on how you respond back with love. John 14, verse 15 and verse 21 says this. If you love me, you will obey what I command. That's our response. Whoever has my commandments and obeys them, he is the one that loves me. 1 John 2, 3 through 6 says this. We know that we have come to know him if we keep his commands. Whoever says, I know him, but does not do what he commands is a liar. And the truth is not in that person. But if anyone obeys his word, love for God is truly made complete in them. This is how we know we are in him. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. How do we respond with love? It's simple. Obeying. Do we know the commandments? Do we know what the New Testament and what is set before us? Do we know that, hey, we are to obey our parents? Do you know that we're not supposed to lie? Did you know that we are supposed to help the needy? You know that we're supposed to help the widows? You know you're supposed to help your neighbor? Did you know that we're supposed to repent? You know that you're supposed to confess his name? You know that you're supposed to be baptized, to be immersed? You know it's a command for us to live faithfully, to walk in that light? Did you know that it is a command for us to worship him? Did you know it's a command for us to partake in the unleavened bread and the fruit of the vine? These are commands. Did you know that? If you know that, do it. That is our response back to him, is obedience. Here's the second one. Matthew 22, 37 through 40. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Colossians 1 verse 18, and he is the head of the body of the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. 1 John 2 and verse 15, love not the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in them. Do we have anybody in here that went to the Ark with the church? Other than my parents, anybody else in here? All right. I love how Genesis 8 talks about this. Did God command Noah to worship him once he left the ark? It doesn't say. Imagine for a minute you're living in the ark, and your wife begins to notice and begins to think about, man, you're a master builder. I mean, if you're capable of building this, actually thanks to God, but then look, I kind of need you to possibly, when we get out of this thing, could you build me a house? Separate from the animals? You know, just think about, I mean, he spent over a year in this boat. I mean, you can't, could you stay a year in your house with your family without getting out? Raise your hand if you would have to literally break the window and get out. Raise your hand. You know, you can't, I mean, like, it's literally, you can't get away. For over a year, he's stuck. There's so much I can say about all that, but that's not the point. But the very first thing he did was, one, he got out and he led first, which that's huge, but we won't talk about that. But the second thing he did, other than stepping out of a boat that he's lived in for over a year, he built an altar. It's exactly what is an expression of love. It's my response out of, I mean, just think about it. A year and a half or so late before, God wiped everybody out, except for Noah and his family. You think for over a year he may have been thinking also, how am I going to repay him for saving my life? So in Genesis chapter 8, man, it's like, he doesn't, but I always picture things. And, you know, like he kicked the door down and ran out, and he didn't do anything else. There's nobody else on the planet. The geography is different. There are no more roads. I mean, everything he was used to is gone. But he gets out, and he builds an altar, and it actually says, and he makes sacrifices. We come in here for an hour on Sunday. And I'm saying an hour, I'm talking about a total of just having to listen to, you know, your preacher, everything out. We're talking about a total of hours. So here he is. The very first thing he does when he gets out is he worships God. That's going to be my best way I can respond back to him. Kyle Idleman writes in his book, God's at War. Has anybody read that book? God's at War. It's just a battle between who is going to have your heart or not. Who wants it? And what happens is we allow the things in our lives to battle for a heart that really doesn't belong to you in the first place. And so it may be sports, it may be, you know, cell phones, technology, it may be work. Man, I love how parents can justify work. I got to work today. Well, I got to play ball today. Well, work is a lot more important than ball. Okay. Prove it. I don't know how, but prove it. I got to eat today. Now, I can go ahead and tell you now. Now, that may be one of the most important things. I'm not going to lie to you. If I could literally I could almost, if I came from a wealthy family and never get paid again, I'd rather just go travel the world and eat. You don't have to pay me. I'll just do it. But if that ever became first, my response back to him is not truly love. And so, obedience is a response of love. Putting him first is a response of love. John 13:34 through 35 says, "A new commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciple if you love one another." 1 John 4:20 through 21 says, "Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God who they have not seen. And he has given us this command. And anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister." I love that passage. That passage right there lets me know that if I can't love you, even the coolest, turn around and let everybody see that t-shirt. This may be the coolest t-shirt in the world. I mean, this guy can put people to sleep better than anybody. But that's the best painting. If I can't, hold on just a minute. If you can't love him, or if I can't love him, then there's no way that you can say you love God. Why? Have you seen him? Have you seen God? Now this text says, listen, how can you say you love me who you haven't seen, but yet you cannot love the very image of the one that I have created who's standing right here before me, and you say you can't love him? Go ahead and sit down. I love you because of your shirt. And obviously more. But now you're saying, no, I love everybody, Derrick. I love everybody. One day your faith is going to be tested by that. How many of you have road rage? I do. Road rage. How many of you just would love, you don't have to raise a hand or anything like that. Just payback. This person did this to me, therefore. And man, we can just be honest right there. I mean, it happens at school, it happens wherever we go. And man, if we claim that our response to Christ's love that we see through the gospel is, hey, that I'm going to love God, then you better love his creatures. You better love what he made. Now, you're like, well, what does that love look like? Are you ready for this? Do you know what this love looks like? Everyone? Love with a light in this world. You love him now, not later. You love with compassion. You love with a protection. You love unconditionally. That's what that love looks like. If you begin to question or you begin to respond in something other than that, go back to that list and look. And then the last one is this. It comes from John chapter 4. And back to the Samaritan woman. I love her response, and we've seen it before, and you've heard of it before. But she comes to the well to do what? You can say it. What is she doing? What is she coming to the well to do? To draw water. Thirsty. Needs something to drink. After meeting the Son of God, what does she do with the water pot? She leaves it. And to me, that's one of the best responses of love that you're going to find, other than Christ being on the cross. Her job and her responsibility is to draw water for her and for whoever is in the house. And she forgets all about it. Why? Because she has one thing on her mind. That is, I got to go back to the town and I got to go tell everybody about what I just experienced. Are you willing to leave the basketball? Are you willing to leave the baseball? Are you willing to leave your music? Are you willing to leave your work? Are you willing to leave your mom? Are you willing to leave your dad? Are you willing to leave your brother and your sister, what are you willing to leave? What are you willing to give up in order to show or express that kind of love? Because do you remember what happened? Once she began to talk, people started coming down that hill. And the very ones that he handpicked didn't respond like the Samaritan woman at the well. They're more worried about whether or not Jesus is eating or not. And he says, listen, now if you want to express a love, he tells his disciples, then go harvest, go take care of them, go show them love now, go and share with them my word. So that's what my question for you today and for tomorrow and till the Lord comes is, how do you respond to the love that Christ has shown you? You've given an opportunity. This is what we do know. We do know without a fact that we have no clue when God's coming. You know, when I realized that I wasn't going to live forever, how many of you thought that at one point, how many of you thought that you were going to live forever? Did anybody ever have that thought?